What is up, guys? We are live here at Pro Play Games, and we're going to come at you with a cell deck. This is a deck that I actually looked at a lot because it does have a lot of utility. Being able to look at the top 5 and just pick what you want is a very strong ability, as well as being a Surge Leader, so you have the power to awaken whenever you want. Obviously, with much like every other Surge Leader, you just want to stay in the front as long as possible to really rack up that drop area with all the cards that you need in the drop area to make this deck work, as well as crafting your hand to however way you want it. I mean, digging 5 deep into the deck is a pretty consistent way of being able to see your secret rare for the win. And this deck actually has a pretty good matchup against Invoker. Being able to get around Barrier on the Vegeta is really cool. A lot of Invoked players or Invoker players probably won't play around that or know what to do to stop it, so you can steal a game 1 from them and make it relatively easy. The only other weakness to this deck really is full-on aggro. That's the only thing. Like the Majin Buu deck, this deck has an extremely hard time dealing with, at least before sideboarding. So on the front side, you can look at the top 5, pick one. You don't have to reveal it to your opponent. I know it's going to become a habit. I still have that habit, playing with it to this day. We've been testing this quite a bit already, and I still do it. But it's pretty cool because, yeah, you look at the top 5, you can send that same exact card to the drop, or you can send another card to the drop. And you can do that once a turn. And then green and yellow to Surge. And this is a pretty cool Surge ability because it evens it out a little bit more. Usually we see draw 3, untap 1. This is an untap 2, draw 2, which is actually pretty significant when you're going for your cell play, because your first cell play is going to require 2 energy. And we're going to see that a little bit later in the deck. So, and then backside, Cell Perfection Surpassed. This ability is really, really strong. Now, you're mainly going to use the ability, the first one here, that until your opponent's next main phase, until the start of your next main phase. So for a whole, not only the turn that you play this, because it's an activate main. So on your turn when you play it, if they play any counter plays, they come in tapped. During their whole turn, everything comes in tapped, and then it'll stop at the beginning of your next main phase when it comes back to you. So really, really strong ability. It essentially just buys you a turn as long as there's not a lot of pressure on board, and usually there's not a lot of pressure on board because all the cells are just removing. Like your whole deck is removal, so they shouldn't have any pressure on you, and because of that, this becomes such a significant ability, being able to just buy you turns. Second one is going to allow you to KO anything and make your opponent discard a card. So you won't use that one as much because, like I said, your 6-drop cell, your first cell evolution is going to do that inherently for you, so you really don't care too much about that happening. Now, to start off with the 1-drop, so we do play 3 of the Android 17. Now, this is only exclusive in the starter deck, so you're going to need this to play the deck. It's a I think it's the only 1 energy green negate in the game. So not only is it that, but if your leader card's an Android, you can pretty much dump any Android in your deck 4 or less to the yard. So very, very powerful, because there's a few Androids in this deck that almost every Android in this deck you want in the drop area. Being able to just dump anything you want is very powerful, and having multiples of it is also good because now there's some graveyard interaction, so you don't want your opponent to take your only copy and kind of leave you without plays. So and it's also an Android 17 name, so it's going to be able to get you out the cell that needs an Android 17 out on the board. It's a 5k combo, so it's an easy combo off. And of course you have some Arrival in this deck, so that already fills the green that you need for Arrival, just in 1 card. And at the end of the day, it's just a negate, so really, really powerful. Next card we play is the Quick Sweep Android 17. So this is I think the last copy of Android 17 that we play, and this is the most powerful one. This is the one that you want in the yard. This is the one that you want to see. So we play 4 copies to make sure that we see it as soon as possible. We do play the super combo that sends anything from your deck to the drop area, so technically you can get away with less of this, but this is something that you can still play for 1 and then increase its cost by 2 if you bring out a cell right after it. So it's not the worst thing to have, and also it's always like an easy discard. Remember, you're going to be discarding 1 card essentially every turn because of your cell leader's effect. So discarding these are always great, and they're 5Ks, easy combo fodder, and you want to have multiples out just in case they like counterplay you in the Invoker deck to put it back at the bottom of your deck. Next is Cell Android Absorber. So the whole main point of this deck, right, is to turn 1 is usually a tap land, like a multicolor energy. And then after that, turn 2, you can play both of these cards out for 2 energy, because this quick sweep comes out for 1 energy if you control no cards in your battle area. So your turn 2 looks like this guy in your drop area, bringing him out for 1. And then if you only control an Android 17, then this cell also recurs itself from the drop area for 1 as well. So for 2 energy, you get 2 creatures out, which is fantastic amount of value, and your opponent discards 1 off this cell. This cell makes your opponent just drop a card, which is actually really powerful. So by doing this, you actually set up your successor play, your main successor play, as early as turn 3. So your turn 2, you're tapping out on this play, which is fine, and then your turn 3, you're ready to start the ball rolling on the successor chain. And then as soon as you get more successor cards out, you can keep playing higher energy successors, because those successors will have more energy costs in exchange. So next, you're going to want to play Android 18 Imminent Danger. Now, I only play 1 of this, and I don't know exactly, I'm not 100% sold on this, so this could be a flex spot, but I do like the ability to at any time have this in the drop area and just, you know, warp it off to get back any Android. Primarily, you can get back, there's 2 targets that you can get back. You can get back the quick sweep, which you normally never want to, but the main one is the impending crisis here. It's essentially just buy back a negate for 1, and I felt like at 1 it would be something that it's okay, I can see. If I can see, if I don't see it, it's okay. Especially if I already have all my other Androids set up, this is my go-to Android to get in the drop so that I can have that option. At the end of the day, that's just card advantage, so it's not bad. This is just supposed to be the championship pack promo. Obviously, they're very hard to get right now, but if you're going to, you know, the February regional, you should be able to get them relatively easily, as well as the Tournament of Power. You know, they're going to be giving out, I think, 5 per player. So I went with 3 copies of this championship pack promo. Now, it is multicolor. It is a 10k combo. It does have like 9k attack, which is irrelevant. It's a 3-drop, but this card is best when it's in the drop area. So this is like your main thing that you want to set up in the graveyard after your Android 17 and your cell. This is a 3 cost, so once you bring out your 6 cost, your 6 plus 3 equals 9, and that's your boss cell. And then if you bring out another copy of these 3 drops next to your boss cell, 9 plus 3 equals 12, which is your secret rare. So that's the whole focus of the entire deck. You want to make sure that you get to that secret rare. You should have it because your leader's just so efficient at trying to get that to your hand as soon as possible. And a really cool thing about this Android as well is if you have 5 cards or less in your hand, its combo power gets reduced by 1. So it's a free 10k if you have 5 or less cards in hand. So, you know, it has multiple uses. You know, it's not completely dead in your hand. And like I said, you usually just want it in the drop area as soon as possible. So, and we don't want both of them to be in our life, which is why we play 3. Because without this card, I don't think you can play this deck, to be honest. So get your hands on those if you really want to play this. Next is Great Ape Samgaku, Sane Instincts. Now this card is, I think, a must for the deck because, oh, especially in this build, I'm playing 4 of the super combo that dumps any card from your deck. So you can actually dump the monkey. Now you can't dump this monkey with the Android negate, so that's really important to note. You could only dump this with the super combo. So to kind of level out playing 4 of the dump super combo instead of playing a split, this is where we make back that advantage that we'd normally lose from playing a super combo that draws us a card. So we're playing 3 copies of this just to do extra things with our energy when we need to draw back up into cards, because our leader does really not technically net us any cards. It's just the value that we get for A, getting whatever we want, and B, setting up, you know, a sort of extra hand in the graveyard essentially. Next is going to be 3 Chomp of the Trickster, and the reason why we play this is because cards like the Secret Rare exist that we're playing, which is really powerful and can really, end the game for us. And it's also a 3 cost, which is actually probably one of the more important parts. So if we do have our 6-drop Cell out on board and we don't have access to our 3-drop Android 18 from the graveyard, this is an easy 6+3 into 9 for Successor. So the energy cost of this card will be decreased in your hand, but when it's on the board, it'll still be a 3. And in this deck, you want to have increments of 3. You just want to have multiples of 3. So you want to be able to get into an easy 6. You want to be able to get into an easy 9 primarily. And then for that one Secret Rare, you want to be able to get into a 12. So as long as you keep your battle cards in increments of 3, even though you don't want to have other type of cards on the board, because remember, you can only play the Android 18 from Yard, the Championship promo, if you control only Cell, and you can only play the Cell from the graveyard if you control only Android 17. So you got to be very selective on when to play this, but at the end of the day, this is a yellow battle card that you can combo for 5 and get out your main arrival play, which is SS Broly All Out Assault. You want to make sure that you have easy access to SS Broly All Out Assault, because this is a 6. It's very easy. If you don't see your 6-drop Cell, this guy just comes out just for comboing. And on top of that, it can be either removal, or it can kind of like stun your opponent's energy, or you can tap down one of their cards, just battle cards, if you like. I believe you can even tap down their leader with this, which is actually pretty cool. So that's there for that. 6 is pretty easy, like I said, to go into our main play, and our main play here is the 6-drop Cell Devourer of the Masses. Now this is pretty much the heart and soul of the deck, because this guy does so much for you. Being able to be a 6 cost is huge, because it gets you into 9 really easily, especially with the Android 18 set up in the graveyard, which is super easy to do. The hardest part is just finding this guy, and this guy's, like I said, online by turn 3, because on turn 2 you're playing Cell. You're playing Android 17 from the drop, and then you're playing Cell from the drop. Your opponent's discarding 1, and then turn 3 you're going to 3 energy, and you play this guy for 2. You still have 1 energy up. Your opponent's going to discard a card, and you're going to KO a card through barrier. So this is how you're really going to win that invoked matchup, because all you want to do is wait for that Vegeta to come down on board, and then you're going to want to kill it. Being able to have access to multiple of these is very important, but there's multiple ways of interacting with that Vegeta. So as long as you have this on curve, you should be okay. And then once he's out, remember the main point, right? So turn 3, you should have this guy out with 1 energy out. And if you want, you can use that last energy to bring out the Android 18. So then you leave this Cell and the Android 18 on board, and your next turn you're charging to 4, and you can play this on curve. So you can play this Cell on curve, which can devastate your opponent, because it literally just looks at their hand, picks 3 battle cards, and places it in their drop area, as well as negating their leader effects for the duration of the turn. So this guy's super powerful with a 30k triple strike body. It can really go for game. So the main point is just be able to see this as early as possible, so that you can get information, 1, and 2, really just get rid of anything that they might have in their hand. Remember, this is any 3 battle cards, so it doesn't really matter with the power constraints. If they drew their victory strike, they were holding onto their victory strike or something like that, you can just rip that out of their hand. This has no requirements whatsoever, other than it being a battle card, which is unfortunate sometimes. I wish it was just any 3 cards, but battle cards is still fine. Then Super 17, Hell's Storm Unleashed. This is your other 9. So these are your 2 Successor 9s that you play, and you only play 3 of each. The Super 17's primarily strongest when you Successor it out first. The reason being is because if your opponent has any more than 4 life, you just crit them all away. So normally in this deck you won't attack with your Cell. Normally with this deck you'll just keep Cell active, and you won't really ever attack your opponent's leader. You don't want to give them cards, because anytime you give them life, this card essentially becomes that much worse. So you want to make this card as impactful as possible, and the only way to do so is really to just make sure you cast them as soon as possible, with your opponent having as many cards in life as possible. So you'll crit them down to 4, And then when he attacks, you can actually draw a card and rest 2 of your opponent's cards. Now remember, you can rest energy with this. So you can rest their energy if they're keeping 2 open for invoker plays or something. You can get rid of that. These 2 9-drops, by the way, cannot be counterplayed by the invoker deck. So that's a pro. Sure, your 6-drop Cell can get counterplayed, but these cannot get counterplayed because that spell has a requirement of 8 cost or less cards. So getting any of these 2 cards out against them, they have actual 0 ways of stopping you from doing that. Speaking about them having 0 ways of stopping you from doing anything, the Cell Xeno is also a 12 cost card. So they won't be able to react to this card at all either, because like I said, that counterplay has a limitation of 8 costs or less. So pretty powerful card, and with your leader, this is probably the fastest and most consistent way of being able to see this when you need it, because of looking at 5 cards a turn is something that's pretty unreal. And this is a very real secret rare and pretty easy to come out in this deck. Like I mentioned, you can just have your 9-drop Cell out on board, which they can't counter, and then that same turn or the following turn, because this successor is free for the secret rare, you can bring out the Android 18 from Yard. The 9 plus 3 equals 12, and that's your Cell Xeno right there. So that's a pretty easy win on turn 5 because of it being able to get dual attack and your opponent also discarding 3 cards. So if you actually resolve the Cell, which is the ideal play, right? You resolve the 9-drop Cell, you make them discard, you look at their hand, you rip 3 cards, then you bring out Cell Xeno, they rip another 3 cards. They're ripping 6 cards on that turn. So if you can get that turn, you should just win. Because remember, they cannot interact with those 2 cards. So the hardest part in this deck is just getting that 6 out there. Primarily that Cell, the 6-drop Cell. Because, like I said, you can bring out that Android 18 for essentially free from the graveyard. If you bring out like a Broly for 6, then you're going to have to do like a Champa or something like that to really get to that 9 as effectively as you would normally want to. So past that, we just have, staples for the most part. This is the energy exhaust card that you want to play. This is your go-to. You can also play this. I've never really casted this card in this deck because remember, you only really want to cast Cells and Android 17s because that's when your cards can come out for essentially free from your drop area. For our super combo, like I mentioned, we're playing 4 of the multicolor Dr. YuGiOh. Now this allows you to just choose 1 green or yellow battle card with energy cost of 4 or less from your deck, place it in your drop area, then shuffle your deck. So you see that it doesn't specify androids, it doesn't specify Cell or anything like that. It's just any battle card with energy cost 4 or less. So extremely powerful in being able to thin out your deck, from all the quote-unquote bricks that you don't want to draw, but also just set up your drop area plays so that you can just play from the drop area and then just keep your Cell chain in hand and really just execute that with the utmost consistency. Then 3 Flying Nimbus. Like I said, aggro is kind of a problem for this deck, so being able to have access to Nimbus and buy yourself another turn is great, especially with the leader being able to buy you essentially 2 turns because you can use this twice. So in combination with the Cell and Flying Nimbus, you're gonna get as many turns as you need to really resolve the Cell chain. And then finally, our Sparking Negate, Shocking Death Ball. Got increasingly better now that a lot of people are going to be playing like 1-drops and 2-drops, especially against Majin Buu. It really kills their 2-drop that they need to resolve the entire chain with. Shocking Death Ball seems like a pretty easy include in a deck like this. So that's pretty much it. This is the deck that I've been playing a lot of. This is the first deck that I kind of made with the new Series 9 cards. Just because I did play Cell back when it was released in Union Force and it was really powerful. This deck seems like it has a higher ceiling to be more powerful and more unfair. It just really depends what your matchups are, but it is a very strong deck, especially when it gets rolling. Like I said, it's very easy for it to get rolling because this front side is literally one of the best front sides that you can possibly ask for in a leader. So it definitely has that potential, especially being a yellow and green leader. You have a lot of access to a lot of cool things in the sideboard that you could potentially put for any matchups that you feel like you're experiencing difficulty with. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys again for watching. Until next time.